Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Why Your Life Really Matters, the podbook. It's been a while since I recorded the last chapter, but I still feel like I'm the same person. It's been a while since you watched the last chapter. Time has passed, and yet I suspect you feel that you're the same. You're different, but we're the same. What is that sameness? The word identity, the root meaning is sameness. Why are we the same? And to answer that question, I want to explore a radical new take on identity. Identity generally, but specifically our human identity. And I want to base that on this new ontology that I've been exploring, which, like most of the things I'm exploring, is a new version of an old idea. It's an evolution of an old idea. And the old idea is this, that you are sensing. It's being run by something you can't see or hear or touch. You can't sense. So a very old idea would be it's all being run by spirits that govern how all of the systems work. Or it's being run by God, who governs how everything works. Or a more modern idea, it's being run by the laws of nature. Now, you don't see any of those. You don't see the laws. You don't see God. You don't see the spirit. But you see what they do. And what they do is this. And I've developed that into an ontology which goes, what if the universe is like a evolving AI system, which is autodidactic, it's learning, it's teaching, it's setting up patterns that repeat, and that the past accumulates, forming these pastivity algorithms, if you will, which govern how every system works, each autonomous system, autonomous self-governing system whole. All these self-governing wholes are being run, they're all pastivity systems. And identity is a pattern that repeats. If I show you random dots and some of them form a pattern, you can recognize an identity. If it stays the same, you go, oh, that pattern has an identity. Identity is pattern. So the patterns that are formed through the evolution of information form the identities of everything, including you and me. And that we are psychobiological pastivity systems, that we're functioning on the biological level and the psychological level. And if you don't like the word pastivity because it's new and a bit strange, maybe sounds a bit cold, you could say intelligence systems. I've said we could use that language much earlier in the podbook. So the universe is evolving intelligence systems like AI, except you're not artificial. You're a real intelligent system. AI is mimicking how the universe actually functions. You could even say, you could even return to the old language of spirits. It sounds like that's kind of crazy. Everything's run by spirits, mythological. What would they be? Well, in one way, what I'm saying is, well, it is run by spirits, but we need to understand what they are, and what they are is pastivity systems. They are patterns that have emerged and then repeat in creative ways. So you can use any of these languages. The key thing is to get the vision, to sense the vision. So you really start experiencing it. Oh, this is being run by something behind it, like your computer is, what you see on the screen is being run by the hard disk, like that. And that enables you to take a very, very different perspective on identity, on your identity. Because the modern assumption is that you're a biological thing. You're a body. And in one way, that's obviously true. But in another way, there's more to say. Because you're a body made up of cells, but the cells live and die all the time. You're not the same cells that you were a while back. You've got new cells. And you have to keep eating to replace them. Every atom, they say, changes every 10 years. My wife has known 3 different physical Tims, and yet I'm the same. Why am I the same? Because I'm the process of becoming of this pastivity system. And that pastivity system is organizing, regulating all the subsystems that come and go, that form the body. All the cells that come and go and the atoms that come and go are being regulated by the Pastivity system. The body is, in this sense, what the Pastivity system is doing. Like the image on a screen, the pixels are what the system is doing. So this is, if you get this, if you see yourself in this new way, you are this because this is what the Pastivity system that you are, intelligence system, spirit, is doing. It's regulating how these subsystems function, how they read and respond to the universe. So a very common idea that I want to address here is not just that you're a body, but the psyche bit is reducible to the body. So you're just this, you're just material, and the psyche is, you're the brain, is a very common idea. You're really the neurological pathways and all of that. And I want to suggest that's not true. And that's going to be very important for how we understand spirituality in a new way, especially death in coming chapters. I want to suggest that the Pastivity system, which is what you are, is functioning on two levels. It's evolved to function on the biological level and the psychological level, the level of soul. And on the biological level, the brain, which is this incredible complex system, is integral to how the body functions and how it relates. And it's able to do these amazing things like talk to you now because of that. But the system on the imaginal level, where it is psi-sensing, where it's processing imaginal information, it's all part of one system, but it is not reducible to the brain. It's a different, more emergent aspect of the system. It's not even dependent on the brain. Now, why would I say that? Because, if you hit me on the head, you damage my brain, it will affect my psyche. If I take a sleeping tablet, I'll go to sleep. All that's obvious. It's one system. The psyche and the body interrelate all the time. But it's one system functioning in two very different ways, not with the psyche dependent on the less emergent system. And the reason I would say that, well, there's lots of reasons, and I'll go into them in more detail much later in the pod book, but let me just point towards them now. There's a few. One of my favorites is terminal lucidity, which is an astonishing phenomena and much more widespread than you might expect. If you haven't come across it before, go and have a look at the evidence. It's very interesting. So terminal lucidity is where somebody has degenerative brain disease, their Alzheimer's or dementia, and probably for some period they've been completely able to function as they normally would. They don't recognize their loved ones, they're not communicative, and they're dying. And then just before they die, they become lucid. And they do recognize their loved ones, and they are able to relate, and then they die. Now, if the psyche level of the system is the same as or dependent on the brain level of the system, that's impossible. Just can't happen. So how does that happen? It's a question we should keep open. Here's another example of something very similar, which is the near-death experience. Now, whatever that is, and we'll discuss that later, this is for sure. In the near-death experience, the person having the experience reports incredibly vivid visions, really coherent and significant. And there's hundreds of thousands of people who've had these experiences, huge numbers. But if they if their brain is being monitored, which these days it often is, there is absolutely no activity. They are brain dead during that period. And a gentleman, Eben Alexander, who is a neuroscientist, was one of the people that's experienced this, and I interviewed him and had a conversation with him for my What is Life series. And he is someone who is very aware of what the brain does, and he could look at his own records of when he was brain dead and go, it's impossible, but I had these amazing experiences at the same time as there was nothing happening in my brain. So how is that happening? How is that possible? Another one I love is hydrocephalus. Fascinating. It's a illness, a problem that people have where the brain is, there is no brain. Well, there is, but very little. And it's mainly water. And most people like that are, or a good proportion, are disabled, as you would expect, but not all. And I remember the look on the face of my professor of psychology when I was at university studying psychology alongside philosophy for a while. And he had just been to a meeting in the UK with the top neuroscientists of the time, in which one of them had presented this case of hydrocephalus of a young man at a university in Sheffield. Became a very famous incident case because this young man had a first in mathematics and hardly any brain. Now, there are people I'm sure will go, well, it's the amazing neuroplasticity that even that small amount of brain can da-da-da. Maybe. Pushing it though, isn't it? Together with all the other examples, it doesn't look like that to me. I'm more inclined to think, as my professor said to me at the time, and I will remember his words forever, when I said, well, what does this mean? And he said, it means, Tim, that everything I've taught you is wrong. Another thing that I find particularly interesting is that in experiments where they stimulate the brain and people have experiences, okay, we know that's true. But the experiences they have are not of the more emergent levels of the psyche. You can't make someone have a philosophical thought or a creative idea, or what you get is sensory memory or experiences, which is exactly what you would expect if what you're stimulating is the biological pastivity system, not the psychological pastivity system. Because the two, although related, are also separate or independent to some degree, because they're doing different things. This is regulating what the system does on the biological level. This is regulating what it does on the level of the imaginal. The other one, which is interesting, I think, is psychedelics. If you've had a psychedelic experience, you know how intense it is. And yet, people on having that experience show less brain activity, not more. You'd expect there to be tons, wouldn't you? But there's not. In fact, the more intense the experience they report, the less brain activity. What the hell? And yet this makes perfect sense if we take this new way of looking at things, which goes, well, of course, because if you activate and the attention is going to the psi sensing, then it will decrease on the other levels. And what's happening with the psychedelics is that it's changing the biology. Obviously, you're taking a drug in such a way that it's freeing up the psyche level to vividly psi-sense in an extraordinary way. Okay, much more on all of that later. What I'm trying to get at in this chapter is it's a radical shift, and I'm really hoping I'm doing my best to explain it as clearly as I can so that you can get it, so you can psi-sense it. Because the unividual is a new way of perceiving your identity. That's what it is. It's going, look, you're not just this thing you're not a body in the present. You are, and that's amazing, of course. But there's more to see. You are relational with temporal depth, I want to say. What does that mean? It means you are the oneness of being, the undifferentiated, differentiated as you, and that's happened through a process of evolution. You are that process. That's temporal depth. And that process is in relationship to the oneness of being, becoming everything else. You are one process of becoming in relationship with all the other processes of becoming that make up the universe. So you're relational. You don't exist independently. You always exist in relationship to the universe. You are that relationship. You're not even just the Pastivity system. You're the Pastivity system, the process of evolutionary becoming, in relationship to everything else. And if you go backwards into your temporal nature, your temporal depth, you can go back. It's your life. That's what you are. Your whole life has been the relationship of the system to the whole, going right the way back. But it doesn't start with your birth exactly, because your birth is only possible because the Pastivity system is arriving from previous Pastivity systems. Your parents, their parents, back and back to the evolution of mammals, to the evolution of life, to the creation of the cosmos, right the way back to the very, very beginning. You are the oneness. Of course, everything is. And you are arising as you. And in that way, you can imagine it, like, I'm sure you've seen those evolutionary trees for the evolution of life. Oh, it starts here and then that differentiates, and then you get this species and that species turns into that species, and you get this whole web or tree of life. And we can imagine something like that for the whole universe. Before life, there was all the evolution of all the different elements, the different atoms from the very first atom. It starts with hydrogen, and then you're off got 109 different atoms now, and then they're coming together and forming compounds, and then there's life, and then there's multicellular life, and then there's psyche. All of that is forming this tree of becoming. And it goes back and back and back, and it's one. And yet it's differentiated into all these different systems, and you're one. And I'm one. You're a branch on the tree, and I am a branch on the tree. Hello, branch. And everything is. So here's what I'm saying in this chapter. I'm suggesting the thing that makes us the same, identity, and not just you and me, but every autonomous system, is that it is an evolving strand of becoming. It is an evolving Pastivity system, intelligence system, which exists only in relationship to all the other evolving Pastivity systems. It's relational. It's a process. It's not just the present moment. It's everything that makes up its past. And that you function through the evolutionary process on both the biological and the level of the psyche. But the level of the psyche is not just really biology. It's a genuinely new, emergent level of processing. And just like the figure on the screen is an expression of the organizing system behind it that you can't see, what you are is actually an expression of the Pastivity system, which is governing everything about you. Everything about your character, about your body, everything. And it's on these two related but distinct levels of Pastivity. The algorithms that govern your body, the algorithms that govern the psyche, they're related, they're not the same. So that's the vision, or that I hope to have got across vividly enough for you to join me now to sense it, just to flip your sense of identity from whatever it was when we started this chapter and try on this. You're a process in time. You're the one arising as you in relation to the one arising as everything else. You're a becoming. And you're on these two levels now. Or three, you could say. You're physical, you're biological, and you're the psyche. Join me in the next chapter to ask, does the psyche survive death? In this pod book, we've been looking at the many ways our lives are significant, that they really matter. But wouldn't they matter even more if the process didn't end?